Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates. I am your host, Adanna Combie, and we are having a conversation this morning with the president of Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Association, TTUTA, Mr. Martin Lumpkin. Good morning.
Good morning, Tobago.
Good morning, and welcome to our program. I know we recently, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday of last week, we received CXC and CSEC
Yes.
results, right? And we're here today to talk about that. And I know going into when it's time to receive these results, we have a lot of anxiety. We have a lot of parents and the children anxious to see their results. Some of them wanting to log on to the portal immediately to see what their results are. And some of them are a bit hesitant to log on because they're uncertain as to what their results are. So we have a few hours of just anxiety waiting to hear what passes my friends got, how well will I do on comparison with each other. So tell us a little bit about the statistics for the results this year and your experience as the president of TTUTA and the responses that you've been hearing from some of the students and parents.
Okay, thank you very much for having me on the program. Let me begin by congratulating all our students in both in Trinidad and Tobago for the results that they would have gotten. Some would be elated and some disappointed, naturally, due to whatever reasons. But still, we congratulate each and every one of our students for the hard work that they would have put in to leading up to the examinations, both CSEC and CAPE. I want to extend a heartfelt congratulations and thanks to our educators as well, who would have gone through quite a bit of work in order to have our students write these examinations. And I know they would have put in long hours, sometimes outside of the school hours as well, too, in assisting our students. We have not gotten a full picture of what has taken place thus far, but the feedback we have been getting is that there have been a general improvement, in the results that schools would have gotten compared to last year or even the year before. And so the hard work of our educators have been paying off over the last year. We want to also thank the Ministry of Education as well as the division for the support that they would have given. We are not satisfied with the level of support. However, we must acknowledge that they have given that support that was necessary at the time, but it can be improved. And so we are seeing that the fruits of the labor of our educators are bearing out to our students. In terms of, you pointed out students waiting to log in and the anxiousness, and that was also reflected in the SCA. And that's another story there. But the CSEC students had to wait a further few hours. They were told to log in at 6 p.m. and subsequently told that there were delays because of the traffic onto logging in. And so that would have continued that anxiety. However, some students were able to get in a couple of hours after and able to access their results. So we wish them all the best in the future.
Yes, correct. And it's always good to know that there's improvement, right? So when you have an assessment and there's a improvement, what do you attribute to the improvement this year as opposed to last year or previous years?
It has to be in terms of the most recent past, the pandemic and the lockdown, in terms of that online engagement, emergency engagement, which the students and teachers had to go through. Some schools were more prepared than others, utilizing the ICTs and online. Some were challenged by it. And that, by and large, would have contributed in the performance of some of the students in the near past during the pandemic and so on. Coming back physically, it would have assisted quite a bit of students in terms of their performance and their learning, the teaching learning process. We have to also say we have a bit of concern with the CXC and the security. This is not the first time. Maybe have been several times before where the security of the examination was compromised, and we're speaking specifically to the paper two of the mathematics examination. And that would have caused anxiety amongst our students as well, too, to know that that paper would have been, after they wrote it, would have been cancelled and it would not go towards their final marks. And so that was, a bit of a concern. However, we know that our educators, our teachers have been really pushing hard in order to prepare the students for these high stake examinations, these standardized tests, which would assist them or determine their future. However, tutor is of the view that students should not be daunted by this, whatever results, if it was not to their satisfaction. However, they need to keep on the course and to focus on what they really want in the future. Sorry.
Right. You spoke about the compromising of one of the papers, the math paper two. What can be done, or what measures have to be put in place to ensure that a situation like this doesn't reoccur? Because, as you said, it's not the first time that something like this has happened. So, what measures need to be put in place to ensure that that the papers cannot be compromised, that there is the security and the comfort that once you sit the exam, that's it. There's no resit or no redo, or that my marks would not go forward because something was compromised. What do we do? What do we put in place to ensure that?
Well, as far as possible, you have to ensure that the security measures are put in place, that there's limited access to the papers, that there are only certain persons who can come in contact with the papers before. And that's the best you can do. It's physical papers that they're writing. So in terms of that security and ensuring that it's locked away properly and that you don't have a number of persons having access. And even persons who have access have to, I know they would have signed confidentiality documents and so. However, they have to be held accountable as well too, because you have put thousands of students, their well-being and their whole feelings and emotions at risk, and that to me is something that is not should be passed over and allowed to happen again. So CXC, as the governing body, has to ensure that the various territories have the necessary security and to provide the resources in order to have those security personnel in place as well too.
You're right. And accountability is the thing for me. Somebody needs to be held accountable. Once you have that access and that you are at that security level, accountability is important. All right. So I know you said that the results were better so far than last year. Do you have any kind of percentages for us, or any sort of ratio, or any type of measure of increase or improvement for us?
No, we haven't gotten any final statistics as well too. We're still getting reports from our schools and our principals, and we also await the information from the Ministry of Education as well too, in terms of the statistics and so. But generally, most of the schools that we have contacted thus far have reported an increase. So in one particular school, the number of students getting 5 or more passes improved from about 34% to about 58%, and some improving in terms of getting ones. I know of one particular school where the English language, English A, they got 100% passes in that area, and there was an increase in the number of ones and twos. Um, might I also add that although we are seeing improvements, we do have concerns of those children, those students who are falling by the wayside, and I put that in inverted commas. One of the areas we're also concerned about, when you have a particular year and you have SEA, it's normally about 17, 18,000 persons. Sorry, um, the persons who are the number of persons writing CSEC. If you trace over the years, it has been reduced to probably 80%, 90% of those students. What happened to those students who did not write CSEC? Is it that they're repeating or they have dropped out of school? So, we have to also look at that. And while we celebrate and we congratulate our students, our education system has to take into account those students who are falling through the cracks, who are deemed to be failures. We have to have an education system which boosts our students' morale, and that can be done by them having to their achievement level improve, and for them to have areas which they can love and would want to pursue. Sometimes that is not the case. So we have to also reflect on those areas as well in our education system when we have these results of these standardized tests.
Right, Mr. Lumpkin, we will speak a little bit more about that because that's an interesting topic. We will speak a little bit more about that when we come back from a break. We're going to take a short break and we continue conversations with Mr. Martin Lumpkin. He's the president of TTUTA, and we're talking about CSEC and CAPE results. We'll be back. Welcome back to the morning show on Tobago Updates. We continue conversations with Mr. Martin Lumpkin. He is the president of Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Association, TTUTA, and we're talking about the results. And while we celebrate the wins, we also have to focus on the areas where weaknesses are and how do we put things in place to ensure that we could improve those scores as well. And you mentioned a few things before we went into break, but if you could elaborate a little bit more and provide some suggestions from the level of TTUTA as to what we can do to support the ones who haven't been able to score as well as the ones who are doing great. What do you think we can put in place? How do we support them? What kind of systems do we put in place to support them?
Okay, so we generally need to support our educators and give them the resources that are necessary for them to enhance the teaching and learning system. We have the Student Support Services Division, which lends, by and large, great support to our educators. However, they are understaffed, they are under-resourced, and if we are to get them up to at least the minimum or the basics, or even go further to that, that would also enhance what is taking place at our schools. We have to also recognize that not all students will follow the what we term the academic route, the mainstream academic route. There are those who are gifted with their hands and can go in other areas, more specifically the TVET areas. And I know that the division, when we had our meeting with the secretary, she would have expressed her concerns about the TVET area and the improvements which she's attempting to have. The same with the Ministry of Education here in Trinidad and Tobago. But I think it's not being done as quickly and as with the focus that really needs to be done. That TVET area has been neglected in the past, and we need to improve that because in those areas we'll find a number of our students may be willing to go that route instead of the normal academic routes that we are looking at. And so the whole overall system needs, we really need a reflection into our education system. What is the nature and purpose of education? And have that conversation. Are these standardized tests really working for our students? Is the curriculum really based on what the nation needs in terms of national development, in terms of having the skills and the knowledge for our students? You'll find also that there are the students who will migrate with their skill set and their knowledge. Are we really attracting them to stay and to develop Trinidad and Tobago? So we spend quite a bit of money on our students, on our human resource, but we are losing persons to other countries. So they are benefiting from what we would have expended. And so we have to now try to bridge that gap in terms of filling certain vacancies. So we have to really look at that overall conversation and really plan for what we want as a nation.
And earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that the ministry is providing support. However, there's room for improvement for them to do more. And I suppose what you just mentioned is part of the more that they can do, right? And you also made reference to what we call the brain drain. After they've received the information and the education here, then they migrate to other communities and different parts of the world, and they give them of themselves there. and what are we doing to retain them in Trinidad and Tobago? And when you look at some of the models of the education system in other countries and the way they teach, and you're right to say, what is the purpose of education? When you look at the models that they employ in other countries and the way they teach, and also the results that come from the way they teach, it's something that we need to adapt, or at least adapt to our climate, to our culture, to our the way we teach, so that our students also can be rounded. Because, as you rightfully said, not every single student is academically inclined, and I think that is one of the major problems. How do you see? I mean, you said a lot, but how do you see us moving forward from the ideas? Because we have to move forward from a conversation to actually implementing, whether it be policy or whatever the case might be. How do you see that conversation moving forward into materializing into something?
The conversation starts with educators and in the education system. However, at a macro level, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has to have that conversation within cabinet, within the government, with the House of Assembly, I must add, and then it has to trickle down to the other areas of society. As you rightfully said, it will take change, a paradigm shift in terms of our mindset, because we have been programmed in a certain way. We have been following this education system that was trusted upon us based upon when we were colonialized, and we continue in some aspects of that same program. So we have to have that conversation in terms of at the macro level, and then to the micro level, within the schools, the universities as well too. I know they have been expressing their point of view when it comes to the education system. It will take the politicians now to actually have the fortitude to go forward with it, because as you said, we have examples out there, the Nordic states and so, of their education system. Um, in terms of one area I can point out is in terms of accountability. We try to make our educators accountable in so many levels. There are some states where the education system allows for teachers to provide the education and not have to be accountable in the way that we are doing it. And that is a deterrent in some aspect. Yes, we have some bad eggs in the basket. However, there's a system that can deal with that. But by and large, we should allow and have our teachers free to go through the education system and to enhance that learning and teaching environment. Upgrading of skills is always important, and we as educators have to realize that we need to retool ourselves. Education is dynamic, it's not static, and we as our educators, we need to keep up with the times. And it is a function of the Ministry of Education and the division to ensure that teachers are constantly given that professional development, and to follow best practices as well too. So in one end, we as educators have to admit and realize that we need to keep up with the times, but also that the Ministry of Education, the employers, the division need to also provide that based upon the ever-changing landscape of the education system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lumpkin. We were speaking with Mr. Martin Lumpkin. He is the president of TTUTA, Trinidad and Tobago, Trinidad Unified Teachers Association. And we thank you so much for joining us on the program and sharing some insight on our statistics, our results, and the way forward as we deal with CSEC and CXC. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. This is the morning show on Tobago Updates. I am your host, Adanna Combie, and we are going for a short break. But before we go, of course, we invite you to share the live, share the live, share the live.